Everyone saw a helpless child in the snow. But the Omega saw a destiny waiting to be awakened. The winter storm had covered Frostvale Valley in a blanket of white, turning the quiet forest into a world of silence and mystery. The wind moved gently between the tall pine trees, carrying the cold breath of the northern mountains. Most creatures had already found shelter before nightfall, but Emily Carter continued walking through the snow, carrying a small basket of supplies and a heart that refused to ignore anyone in need. Emily was an Omega from Frostvale Pack, a title that many people used to judge her before they ever knew her. In a world where status often decided respect, Omegas were frequently overlooked. They were expected to stay in the background, follow traditions, and never question those with greater power. Emily had lived with those assumptions her entire life, but she never allowed them to decide who she was. She believed kindness was not a weakness. She believed every life mattered. That belief was why she stopped when she heard a faint sound beneath the falling snow. At first, she thought it was only the wind moving through the trees. But as she stepped closer, she discovered something impossible to ignore. A small child was lying alone in the snow, wrapped in a thin blanket with no one around. Emily's heart tightened. She did not think about what others would say. She did not think about whether someone important might be searching for the child. She only saw someone who needed help. Without hesitation, Emily removed her own warm coat and carefully covered the child. "You are not alone anymore," she whispered softly. The child's tiny hand reached toward her, and Emily held on gently, offering the comfort she wished everyone in the world could receive. Far away from Frostvale Valley, in the grand halls of Blackthorn Kingdom, the Alpha King felt something he could not explain. Adrian Blackwood was known throughout the werewolf territories as a powerful and respected ruler. He carried the responsibility of an entire kingdom on his shoulders, and rarely allowed emotions to influence his decisions. The Alpha King trusted logic, tradition, and duty above everything else. But that night something changed. A strange warmth moved through the ancient mark carried by his bloodline, a mark that had remained silent for years. Adrian looked down in confusion, wondering why the symbol connected to his destiny had suddenly awakened. He did not know that, hundreds of miles away, an Omega woman had just made a choice that would change both their futures. Emily stayed beside the child throughout the night, protecting the small life she had found beneath the snow. She did not know about royal secrets, ancient promises, or the connection waiting to be revealed. She only knew one thing: no one should be abandoned when they needed kindness the most. By morning, the story of the mysterious child reached the ears of the Alpha King. Adrian began his journey toward Frostvale, believing he was searching for answers about a lost secret. But destiny had already made its choice. The person standing beside that child was not a powerful noble, not a famous warrior, and not someone seeking recognition. She was simply an Omega with a compassionate heart. And the moment Adrian finally saw her, he would discover that the greatest force in his kingdom had never come from power. It had come from the one person everyone else had failed to notice. The journey to Frostvale Valley began before sunrise, as the Alpha King traveled through the frozen northern lands toward the mystery that had awakened an ancient mark. Adrian Blackwood had spent years searching for answers about the destiny connected to his bloodline, but he never expected that the truth would appear in the form of an Omega woman standing in the snow beside a lost child. The stories passed down through generations spoke of a connection that could only be revealed through compassion, but many believed those stories were nothing more than forgotten legends. Adrian had always trusted responsibility over fate. He believed a king created his own path through discipline and wisdom. Yet the strange awakening of his mark had challenged everything he thought he understood. When Adrian finally reached Frostvale Valley, he expected to find a secret hidden by powerful families or ancient leaders. Instead, he found Emily Carter. She was sitting quietly near the child, making sure the little one stayed warm and comfortable. She looked nothing like the people Adrian usually met at royal gatherings. She carried no title, no wealth, and no desire to impress anyone. But there was something about her presence that made the Alpha King pause. Emily looked up as Adrian approached. She immediately recognized who he was, not because of his reputation, but because of the respect surrounding him. Everyone knew the Alpha King. Everyone knew his decisions shaped the future of the werewolf territories. Yet Emily did not act differently around him. Are you the one searching for this child? She asked calmly. Adrian was surprised by her question. Most people became nervous in his presence. Most people carefully chose every word before speaking. But Emily simply asked what needed to be asked. Yes, Adrian answered. This child is connected to a matter that concerns my kingdom. Emily looked down at the child and then back at him. Then I hope your kingdom remembers that this is not only a matter. This is a life. Those words stayed with Adrian. He had expected many things from the person who awakened his mark. He expected ambition. He expected someone who wanted recognition. He did not expect an Omega who cared more about the child's safety than her own future. As Adrian examined the situation, his mark reacted once again. A warm glow appeared, confirming what he had been trying to understand. The ancient connection was real. The person standing before him was not there by accident. The Alpha King looked at Emily with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Do you know what you have awakened? He asked. Emily shook her head. No. I only know that someone needed help. Her answer was simple, but it carried a truth Adrian had forgotten. Sometimes destiny did not arrive through power or authority. Sometimes it appeared through an ordinary act of kindness. As they prepared to return to Blackthorn Kingdom, Emily hesitated. She had no interest in palace life or royal attention. She only wanted to make sure the child was safe. Adrian noticed that immediately. For the first time in many years, he met someone who did not want anything from the Alpha King. She did not seek influence. She did not seek a reward. She simply followed her heart. And as the snow continued falling over Frostvale Valley, Adrian realized that the Omega standing beside him might be the greatest mystery his kingdom had ever faced. The arrival of Emily Carter at Blackthorn Kingdom created a wave of curiosity unlike anything the royal court had experienced in years. The Alpha King had returned from Frostvale with an Omega woman and a mysterious child, but no one understood why. Whispers traveled through the castle halls as nobles tried to guess the reason behind Adrian Blackwood's decision. Some believed Emily was simply a stranger caught in an unusual situation. Others wondered if there was a hidden connection they had yet to discover. But Adrian noticed something that others overlooked. Emily did not care about the attention surrounding her. She did not walk through the grand halls expecting admiration. She did not use the interest of the royal court to gain influence. Instead, she spent her time caring for the child and learning about the unfamiliar world around her. The contrast surprised Adrian. He had spent most of his life surrounded by people who wanted something from the Alpha King. They wanted approval, status, or a place closer to power. Emily wanted none of those things. She simply wanted the child to feel safe. During her first days inside the castle, Emily struggled to adjust to the traditions of Blackthorn Kingdom. The enormous stone halls, the formal ceremonies, and the careful behavior expected around royalty were completely different from her quiet life in Frostvale. Yet she never complained. She watched, listened, and treated everyone with the same kindness she had shown before. Adrian began observing these small moments. He noticed how Emily thanked the servants who brought meals. He noticed how she spoke gently to the guards and how she always asked about the child before thinking about herself. These details revealed more about her character than any introduction ever could. One afternoon, Adrian found Emily sitting near the castle garden with the child resting peacefully beside her. The winter sunlight touched the snow-covered grounds, creating a rare moment of calm. You are not afraid of this place, Adrian said. Emily looked at him with a thoughtful expression. I was afraid at first. But fear does not help anyone. Adrian was surprised by her answer. Many people believed courage meant having no fear. Emily understood something different. Courage meant choosing kindness even when fear existed. Most people would have used this opportunity to change their position, Adrian said. They would want recognition. Emily looked toward the garden. A child needed someone. That was enough. Her words remained in Adrian's mind. The Alpha King had spent years searching for someone who could stand beside him, someone who understood the responsibility that came with leadership. But perhaps he had been searching in the wrong places. As the days passed, the ancient mark connected to Adrian's bloodline continued responding whenever Emily was near the child. The royal scholars began studying old records, searching for answers about the meaning behind the mark's awakening. They discovered references to a forgotten promise between generations, a promise that spoke of an unexpected bond appearing during a time of uncertainty. Adrian read those records carefully, but he did not want to believe in destiny simply because ancient words told him to. He wanted to understand Emily as a person, not as a symbol. And the more he learned, the more he realized something important. The Omega standing beside him was not special because of a mark. She was special because of the choices she made when nobody was watching. Meanwhile, Emily began to sense that her life was changing forever. She had entered Blackthorn Kingdom as a stranger who found a child in the snow. But she was slowly becoming part of a story far greater than she ever imagined. The mystery surrounding the ancient mark continued to grow inside Blackthorn Kingdom, but Adrian Blackwood found himself paying less attention to the legends and more attention to the person standing at the center of them. Emily Carter had arrived without a title, without influence, and without any expectation of changing the world around her. Yet every day she spent in the castle revealed another reason why the old stories might have pointed toward her. The royal scholars continued searching through forgotten records, trying to understand the connection between the Alpha King's mark and the Omega who had discovered the child in the snow. But while they searched through history, Adrian was discovering something much more personal. He was discovering the quiet strength of Emily herself. One morning, Adrian invited Emily to walk through the eastern gardens of the castle. Unlike the formal halls where every conversation was carefully planned, the gardens offered a peaceful place where they could speak freely. Snow covered the pathways, and the sound of the wind moving through the trees created a rare moment of calm. "You still act as if you do not belong here," Adrian said. Emily looked around the gardens before answering. "Because I do not want to forget where I came from." Adrian studied her carefully. Many people who entered the royal world wanted to leave their old lives behind. They wanted to become someone new. But Emily carried her past with pride, even the difficult parts. "You know, many people here underestimated you," Adrian said. Emily smiled slightly. "I know, but I cannot spend my life trying to prove them wrong." Her answer surprised him. Adrian had spent years dealing with people who wanted recognition. Emily was different. She was not trying to win against anyone. She was simply trying to do what she believed was right. Meanwhile, the child found in the snow continued bringing unexpected changes to the kingdom. The little one seemed to respond warmly to Emily, and even the royal staff noticed the connection between them. Emily treated the child with patience and care, never thinking about what the situation might mean for her own future. She only focused on providing comfort and protection. The royal advisors began to see what Adrian had already noticed. Emily's presence was not creating chaos. It was creating unity. However, not everyone in the kingdom welcomed the changes. Some members of the royal court believed traditions should remain untouched. They questioned why an Omega from Frostvale Pack was receiving the attention of the Alpha King. They believed someone without a powerful background could never understand the responsibilities of the royal family. Emily heard these opinions but refused to let them change her. She had spent too much of her life being judged by assumptions. She knew that the only answer was to continue showing who she truly was. Adrian noticed her calmness. "Does it not bother you when people doubt you?" he asked. Emily looked at him and replied, "It bothers me when people are hurt because of their beliefs. But I cannot force everyone to understand me immediately." Those words stayed with Adrian. The Alpha King had always believed leadership meant making others follow his decisions. Emily showed him that sometimes leadership meant creating a space where people could learn and change. That evening, as Adrian reviewed the ancient records again, he discovered a new passage hidden within the old texts. It spoke of a child found beneath the winter sky, and an Omega whose compassion would awaken a forgotten bond. For the first time, Adrian wondered if destiny had not chosen Emily because she was powerful. Perhaps destiny had chosen her because she was exactly the kind of person the kingdom needed. And as he looked toward the quiet halls where Emily cared for the child, the Alpha King realized that the greatest mystery was no longer the ancient mark. It was the way one Omega's kindness had begun changing everything around her. The hidden message within the ancient records changed the way Adrian Blackwood viewed the mystery surrounding Emily Carter. For the first time, the Alpha King began to understand that the connection between them was not simply about an awakened mark or an old legend. It was about a choice made long before either of them were born. A choice based on compassion, trust, and the belief that true leadership came from protecting those who could not protect themselves. While the royal scholars continued studying the forgotten texts, Emily remained focused on the child she had found beneath the snow. She never asked why. Destiny had brought the child into her life. She never questioned what the future might bring. She simply cared for the little one as if kindness was the most natural thing in the world. Adrian noticed this every day. He noticed how Emily could enter a room and make people feel valued. He noticed how she listened to servants, guards, and villagers with the same patience she showed everyone else. The Alpha King had spent years surrounded by people who treated him differently because of his title. Emily was the first person who treated him differently because of who he was beneath that title. One afternoon, Adrian found Emily in the library reading old records about the history of the Northern Pacts. He expected to see curiosity, but instead he saw determination. "You are trying to understand this kingdom," Adrian said. Emily looked up and smiled. "I am trying to understand the people who live here." Her answer reminded him of the words hidden in the ancient records. The chosen one was never described as someone who demanded power. The description spoke of someone who created connection where others saw separation. As the days passed, the relationship between Emily and Adrian slowly changed. They were no longer strangers brought together by an unexplained event. They were two people learning from each other. Adrian began sharing parts of himself that he rarely showed anyone. He spoke about the expectations placed on him from childhood, the responsibility of carrying an entire kingdom, and the loneliness that came with always being seen as the strongest person in the room. Emily listened without judgment. "You know," she said softly, "being strong does not mean you have to carry everything alone." Those words affected Adrian more than she realized. He had always believed that asking for help meant showing weakness. Emily showed him that trust was not weakness. It was a different kind of strength. Meanwhile, rumors about Emily continued spreading throughout the kingdom. Some people began accepting her, but others remained uncertain. They questioned whether an Omega could truly have a place beside the Alpha King. Emily heard those doubts, but she refused to let them define her. She had already learned that people's opinions often revealed more about them than about the person they judged. One evening, Adrian invited Emily to attend a royal gathering. He wanted the kingdom to see what he had already seen. Not her connection to the mark. Not her connection to the mysterious child. But her character. As Emily entered the grand hall, many eyes turned toward her. For the first time, she did not feel like someone who did not belong. She felt like someone who had a purpose. Adrian watched the room carefully and realized that the future of Blackthorn Kingdom was beginning to change. Not because of an ancient prophecy alone, but because one Omega had reminded everyone that kindness could be powerful. And somewhere deep within the castle, the awakened mark carried a truth that even the Alpha King could no longer ignore. The destiny written in the snow had only just begun. The Grand Hall of Blackthorn Kingdom had always been a place where power was displayed. For generations, the greatest leaders of the werewolf territories had gathered beneath its golden lights to discuss alliances, traditions, and the future of their people. But on this evening, something felt different. The attention was not focused only on the Alpha King. It was focused on the Omega woman standing beside him. Emily Carter entered the gathering with the same quiet confidence she had carried since the night she found the child beneath the snow. She did not wear her new position like a crown. She did not look around expecting acceptance. She simply walked forward with the same gentle heart that had guided every choice she made. Adrian Blackwood watched the reactions around the room. He saw the surprise in the eyes of those who once believed an Omega could never influence the future of the kingdom. He also saw something else. He saw people beginning to question the beliefs they had followed for years. When Adrian introduced Emily, he did not speak about the ancient mark or the forgotten prophecy. He did not introduce her as someone connected to destiny. Instead, he spoke about her actions. "This woman reminded us that every life has value," he said. "She showed us that leadership begins with compassion." The room became quiet. Many expected Adrian to announce a political decision or reveal some ancient secret. Instead, he gave recognition to someone who had earned respect through kindness. Emily listened carefully, feeling the weight of the moment. She knew many people were watching her, waiting to see if she would become someone different after receiving attention from the Alpha King. But she had no desire to change. She was still the same Omega who stopped in the snow because a child needed help. After the gathering, Emily and Adrian walked through the castle gardens. The evening air was peaceful, and the lights from the palace reflected across the snow-covered paths. "You were not nervous," Adrian said. Emily smiled. "I was nervous. I just did not want fear to decide what I should do." Adrian looked at her thoughtfully. That answer explained so much about her. Emily was not fearless. She was brave because she chose what mattered more than her fear. As they continued walking, Adrian admitted something he had rarely shared. "For most of my life, people respected the title before they respected the person." Emily looked at him. Maybe they never had the chance to know the person. Her words touched something within him. Adrian realized that Emily had never tried to change his role as Alpha King. She had only reminded him that a ruler could still be human. Meanwhile, the royal scholars uncovered more details about the forgotten prophecy. The ancient writings suggested that the child found in the snow was connected to a future where different packs would finally unite. But the prophecy also mentioned a challenge. The chosen path would not be easy because old beliefs rarely changed without resistance. When Adrian read those words, he knew the kingdom was approaching a turning point. The bond between him and Emily was becoming stronger, but the world around them was still learning to accept it. Emily looked toward the distant mountains beyond the castle walls. She had entered Blackthorn Kingdom as a stranger with no idea what awaited her. Now she stood at the center of a story that could change the future of every pack. And, while she still did not know exactly why destiny had chosen her, she understood one thing clearly. She would continue choosing kindness, no matter how powerful the world around her became. The truth hidden within the ancient records began to change everything inside Blackthorn Kingdom. For generations, the people had believed that destiny was something reserved for those born into power, those with important names, and those who carried respected bloodlines. But the arrival of Emily Carter challenged everything they thought they knew. She had not entered the kingdom searching for a place beside the Alpha King. She had not asked for recognition. She had simply followed her heart when she found a child alone in the snow. Yet that single choice had awakened a connection that reached deeper than anyone expected. Adrian Blackwood spent hours studying the forgotten writings discovered by the royal scholars. The words described a bond that would appear during a time when old divisions needed to be healed. They spoke of an Omega whose compassion would become a bridge between people who had spent years separated by tradition. Adrian looked at Emily differently now. Not because of the ancient mark. Not because of the prophecy, but because he understood the meaning behind those words. Emily had already shown the qualities the kingdom needed before anyone knew she was connected to destiny. Meanwhile, the child found in the snow continued bringing unexpected hope to Blackthorn Kingdom. The little one had become a reminder that every life had value, no matter where someone came from or what title they carried. Emily spent her days making sure the child felt safe and cared for. She never considered herself important because of the attention surrounding her. In her heart, she was still the same person who had walked through the frozen forest and chosen kindness when nobody else was there. However, not everyone accepted the changes happening within the kingdom. Some members of the royal council believed the old ways should remain untouched. They questioned whether an Omega woman could truly stand near the Alpha King. They believed tradition was more important than understanding. Emily heard their doubts, but she did not respond with anger. She had learned long ago that people often feared what they did not understand. Instead of trying to force acceptance, she continued showing the truth through her actions. Adrian noticed the difference between Emily and everyone else around him. Others often tried to prove they deserved respect. Emily simply gave respect first. One evening, Adrian invited Emily to walk through the oldest part of the castle, where the walls carried stories from past generations. He wanted to show her the place where previous Alpha Kings had made important decisions. Many kings believed strength came from being feared, Adrian said quietly. Emily looked at the ancient halls and replied, "Maybe the strongest leaders are the ones people feel safe following." Adrian stopped for a moment. Her words stayed with him because they reflected everything he had slowly begun to understand. Leadership was not only about commands or authority, it was about trust. That night, another message was discovered within the ancient records. The scholars found a hidden passage describing the child from the snow and the Omega who protected him. The writing revealed that the future of the werewolf territories would depend not on the strongest ruler, but on the connection between those willing to choose compassion over pride. Adrian read the words carefully and looked toward the quiet room where Emily cared for the child. The answer he had been searching for was no longer hidden in old legends. It was standing in front of him. The Omega everyone had overlooked was the person who had reminded an entire kingdom what true strength looked like. The days following the discovery of the hidden message brought a quiet change throughout Blackthorn Kingdom. The ancient words had revealed a truth that many had struggled to accept. The future of the werewolf territories would not be shaped by power alone. It would be shaped by the choices of those who understood compassion, trust, and unity. For the first time in many years, people began looking beyond titles and traditions. They began looking at the person behind the name. Emily Carter noticed the change, but she never allowed it to change who she was. She continued caring for the child found beneath the snow, continued helping those around her, and continued treating everyone with the same kindness she had shown from the beginning. To her, being recognized was never the goal. Doing what was right had always been enough. Adrian Blackwood saw this clearly. The Alpha King had spent years believing that a ruler had to stand above everyone else. But Emily had shown him another path. She showed him that a true leader could stand beside others instead of only standing above them. One morning, Adrian invited Emily to the royal archives, where generations of Alpha Kings had recorded their most important decisions. The room was filled with old books, forgotten stories, and memories of leaders who had shaped the kingdom. For centuries, every Alpha King searched for strength, Adrian said as he looked through the records. But perhaps we were searching for the wrong thing. Emily looked at the pages in his hands. Strength can mean different things to different people. Adrian smiled slightly. He had heard countless opinions from advisors and nobles, but Emily always had a way of seeing beyond the obvious. She did not speak to impress him. She spoke because she believed her words mattered. Later that day, the royal council gathered to discuss the future of Blackthorn Kingdom. Many members had changed their opinions about Emily, but some still struggled to accept the idea of an Omega standing at the center of such an important destiny. They questioned whether tradition should be changed because of one unexpected person. Adrian listened carefully before responding. A tradition that refuses to grow becomes a barrier instead of a guide. The room became silent. It was the first time the Alpha King had openly challenged the beliefs that had guided the kingdom for generations. He was not rejecting the past. He was choosing to learn from it. Emily watched Adrian with quiet admiration. She realized that the Alpha King was changing too. He was no longer only protecting his kingdom through authority. He was protecting it through understanding. That evening, the child reached toward Emily while Adrian stood nearby. The moment seemed simple, but the ancient mark on Adrian's bloodline responded once again. The scholars later explained that the mark was not a command or a symbol of ownership. It represented a connection built on trust and destiny. Adrian finally understood the truth. The bond had awakened not because Emily was chosen by power. It had awakened because Emily had already shown the heart of a leader. As the moonlight covered Blackthorn Kingdom, Adrian stood beside Emily and looked toward the future. The path ahead would still bring challenges, but for the first time, he felt certain they could face them together. The Omega who had once been overlooked had become the hope of an entire kingdom. And the Alpha King who once carried everything alone had finally learned that true strength was never found in standing above others. It was found in standing with them. The first light of spring arrived in Blackthorn Kingdom after a winter that had changed everything. The snow that once covered the northern lands had melted away, revealing new paths, new beginnings, and a future that no one could have imagined. The child found beneath the frozen sky had become a symbol of hope, but the greatest change came from the two people who stood beside that child. Emily Carter, the Omega who was once ignored by many, had become someone the entire kingdom respected. Yet she remained the same person who had walked into the storm without expecting anything in return. She still listened before speaking. She still helped before asking for help. She still believed that kindness was a choice everyone could make. Adrian Blackwood had changed as well. The Alpha King who once carried every responsibility alone, had learned that leadership was not about appearing unbreakable. It was about understanding the people who trusted him. He no longer saw compassion as a weakness. He saw it as the foundation of a stronger kingdom. On the day the royal council gathered to recognize the new path of Blackthorn Kingdom, Adrian stood before his people with Emily beside him. Many remembered the night when an Omega found a child in the snow and unknowingly awakened a forgotten connection. But now they understood that the most important moment was not the awakening of the mark. It was the choice Emily made before anyone knew who she was. She helped because it was right. She cared because every life mattered. Adrian looked across the great hall and spoke with a calm confidence that came from understanding rather than pride. A kingdom is not defined by the strength of one person. It is defined by the hearts of everyone who protects it. The words carried through the hall, and many who once doubted Emily finally understood why destiny had brought her there. She was never chosen because she had the greatest power. She was chosen because she reminded everyone what power should be used for. Later, Emily and Adrian returned to the quiet garden where they had first spoken honestly with each other. The snow had disappeared, and flowers were beginning to grow again beneath the warm sunlight. Emily looked across the kingdom walls and smiled. Everything feels different now. Adrian stood beside her and nodded. It is different because you changed the way we see each other. Emily looked at him thoughtfully. No, the people changed because they were ready to see the truth. Adrian smiled because he knew she would never take credit for the transformation she created. That was who Emily had always been. The Omega who never searched for a crown. The woman who never demanded recognition. The person who proved that a gentle heart could inspire an entire world. As years passed, the story of the child in the snow continued to be shared throughout the werewolf territories. It became a reminder that destiny does not always arrive with grand announcements or powerful beginnings. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through a simple act of kindness from someone the world has overlooked. And in Blackthorn Kingdom, everyone remembered the same truth. True strength is gentle, true leadership is compassionate, and sometimes the person who saves the future is the one everyone failed to notice.